What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for a comedic spin on all the goings-on in the world. My name is, as always, Jacob Paveo, and I come to you from the Great White North every Tuesday evening, Eastern Standard Time, fresh for download to listen to at work Wednesday morning for everyone, the entire world around. This podcast comes to you completely ad-free each and every week, and all that I ask is for you to hit that subscribe button on whatever podcasting platform you happen to be listening to, and tell your friends about me, either in person or with a share anywhere on social media. All of those shares, all those recommendations, it is much appreciated. Spread the love. Also, if you have a second, please go rate us 5 stars over on Apple Podcast or, really whatever podcasting platform you are aware of that has a rating system, because turns out most don't, which kind of sucks, but anywhere that does have a rating system, if you give us that 5-star rating, it really helps us to show up higher in searches and helps more people discover the podcast that week. Now, this week, as opposed to the week where you give it a 5-star review, although I recommend giving a 5-star review right now. That way, next week when someone comes to look for the podcast, they find next week's episode. But it's too late for this, because it's this week. And this week we're talking about the spicy Super Bowl halftime show and the game that they play around it. We're also going to be going back to the coronavirus for some updates and talk about how this illness is being viewed and discussed in public right now and all the problems that lie therein. And finally this week, I found out that scientists are trying to make it rain like 50 Cent in a strip club in 2005. And if that doesn't sound appealing, I don't know what else will. But first, yesterday was the Iowa Caucus for the Democratic National Convention. It was a shit show. There are still not full results, but they actually started coming in right now. So I have some live numbers. They're not final, as I said, but yeah, this is awesome. Like, it's a presidential nomination. Live numbers are coming in as I record. And I'm recording on my new software fully for the first episode. I've been kind of mixing it in the new software. Now I'm trying to record in it, so solid chance I lose this entire episode. But hey, you got to start somewhere, right? So hopefully this works out well. But let's just get ready, everyone, because this right here, this is the Laugh to Learn podcast. Hey, check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. So these live Iowa caucus poll numbers are kind of crazy to look at. It's a little bit surreal. So if you guys go way back with the podcast, you will know that about, May or June of last year, I said the one to watch out for, the dark horse in this race, was Pete Buttigieg. Well, in Iowa, and of course, this isn't necessarily saying he's going to win, and it's like half reported for the Iowa caucus votes, but it appears that Mayor Pete Buttigieg is winning. He's ahead in the polls. He right now is number one in the race. He's just edging out Bernie Sanders, so Mayor Pete has 26.9% of the votes with 10 delegates, and Bernie Sanders has 25.1% of the votes, also with 10 delegates. So the delegate count is all that matters. So technically right now the two of them are tied. I'm not really going to get into the how this works because caucuses are different from primaries, which are different from elections. It's quite complicated, the American system. Maybe one day I'll get into it, but today is not that day. All I wanted to mention was that, for those of you who are aware, Iowa had major issues last night. Basically, they had an app for people who are running the different caucus locations to send the results through this app, and that would help tally all the votes. Unfortunately, it appears that app crashed and they couldn't tally any of the votes, and then shit hit the ceiling, and here we are now a full day later, and still only about 50 or 60% of the votes have been recorded, so it's quite insane. But with half of the caucus locations reporting in, Joe Biden is in fourth place, and he does not have any delegates voted. Also, Andrew Yang only has 1% of the vote, which I thought was very interesting. But right now, Mayor Pete and Bernie Sanders each have 10 delegates. Elizabeth Warren has 4. And basically, you count total delegates from a caucus state, and that tells you who won that state, which is a dumb way to do things, but that's how some states do it. But either way, the point of the matter is, right now, with just about 26.9%, so just about 27% of the vote, Mayor Pete is winning in Iowa. So I wanted to mention that he is, between Mayor Pete and Andrew Yang, I think we're looking at two people who will not be president right now. I don't actually think Mayor Pete will win the nomination. This actually really helps Bernie, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But I think, if we're looking 4 or 8 years down the road, depending on who wins this election, I think both Mayor Pete and Andrew Yang are serious forces to be reckoned with in the near future. They're both going to be like 50, or I think in their early 50s for the upcoming 2 election cycles. So that's quite impressive that they've done so well so far, and nowhere to go but up. This year's Super Bowl was a closely contested game, which ended in a big 2-possession deficit being overcome by our new world champions, which is stupid because the NFL is played in one country, but we still call them world champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, who brought football pride back to the state of Missouri, Mr. President, for the first time since the year 1970. Of course, Donald Trump sent out a tweet congratulating the state of Kansas, but Kansas City, the football team, is actually in Kansas City, Missouri, not in Kansas City, Kansas. So something he probably should have known, but I'm not really as mad as some people are about it. I just think it was a dumb thing to do. The interesting thing I found about the Super Bowl this year was actually the coverage of the game, or really the lack thereof. All I see and hear about is the halftime show and the national anthem, and I really have to wonder what this game is going to look like in 20 years. Because I would recommend, honestly, another big show, like a big concert, either right before or more likely right after, done to the same level of extravaganza to keep all those TV viewers through the whole event. As for the halftime performance itself this year, we got Shakira and J-Lo, who appeared with the Spanish phenom, Bad Bunny. English listeners will know him from Cardi B's song, I Like It Like That, but in South America and the southern Spanish-speaking parts of the United States, he is like the cream of the crop. He is on top right now, so it was really fitting for a show in Miami. I know who Bad Bunny is, but a lot of my friends don't, so it definitely didn't. I don't think it did. His appearance didn't do really well outside of people who are either listen to Spanish music or really know the music industry. Outside of that, you really don't know who he is because he doesn't sing in English. So he's not played on terrestrial English radio, even on Spotify. Like, I listen to a lot of Spanish music on Spotify because I listen to Korean music, Portuguese music. I listen to a lot of different languages actually on my Spotify, so I get his songs coming through my rotations, but I understand that most people don't, and he's a huge artist, but I don't really know that it worked outside of Miami, but it was cool to see him perform there still. And the reason that I say that they should do a second concert at the end of the show is because it seems like everyone watched for the halftime show. Everyone was like, Who's going to be out there with them? Is Cardi B going to show up? What's going on? Metallica kind of hinted at showing up, and I'll get to those two later. But, this is like everyone wants to see the halftime show, and it seems like very few people actually cared about the football game, which is really, really strange. And I think if they threw another concert at the end, their TV viewings would be even higher because people would stick around waiting for that final concert basically to start. But back to the actual halftime show we had this year, Shakira opened the show, and she absolutely killed it. It was one of the best half of a performance at the Super Bowl ever. I have watched every single Super Bowl halftime show. I've watched every single one of them multiple times. So I feel very confident in saying that Shakira's part was one of the best solo performances I've seen at the Super Bowl. But J-Lo slipped up a little bit. She sang the verses for her songs and just kind of did little bits of the chorus. But unfortunately, just straight up, no one knows J-Lo's songs like that. You know what I mean? Justin Timberlake could have got away with that. Beyonce could have got away with that. But J-Lo, everyone knows her choruses, right? I'm still Jenny from the block. That's what everyone knows. She jumped in with verses and avoided the hook from the songs. I thought it was a little odd. And she also had a slip during her dance routine. Now, I believe it was her backup dancer's fault. I haven't gone back and looked at it, but it looked like he slipped his grip on her for a second when she was doing a flip. You can go back and watch that for yourself. But, it's definitely not the place for that kind of a mistake. And it just kind of added to that. She did good. It was a good Super Bowl performance by J-Lo, but she was definitely upstaged by Shakira. Then after they each had their own little set, the two girls each had a dance routine to close before dancing together at center stage. This is where Shakira really outshone. She did her belly dancing with the rope and everything. And J-Lo's ballroom, it was on point. It was cool, but it just she can't dance like Shakira. J-Lo's hot, but Shakira is fucking hot. And she blew her out of the water. In my opinion, the dancing should have probably been in the middle, and they should have brought Bad Bunny out at the end to do his two songs. And I think Shakira should have closed with I Like It Like That and Hips Don't Lie, because that was a dope mix they did. And Bad Bunny should have helped her close that out with, J-Lo doing some singing in there or whatever. But I only have a diploma in music management and a business degree, so what do I know? The talk around the internet on the halftime show is all about that either it was the best thing ever, which it wasn't, or we're seeing a whole lot of feminist women and God-fearing men who are upset that two girls were dancing like they were in a strip club on stage. Now, I'm just going to keep it quick here. Personally, I remain unopposed to having strippers or stripper-like girls on stage during the Super Bowl. They can do it again. I will not complain about it. But I also wouldn't mind more of a concert than an adult dance recital. It was a little bit drawn out, the dancing, and it was good, not great. But then we also had a whole bunch of controversy because apparently, and this came out a little bit before the Super Bowl actually started, but a few acts such as Metallica and Cardi B, who I've mentioned earlier, actually turned down the opportunity to appear in the halftime show because the NFL still places these super strict guidelines. So, for example, this was a big deal when the Red Hot Chili Peppers played because the instruments must all be pre-recorded for TV and vocals are the only thing done live. So there's two mixes is the proper wording for it. So everyone in the arena hears one thing, but on TV you hear something else, and the only thing that's the same are the vocals. So basically the band has the option to play for the people in the stadium, but not for the people at home. So in their ear, they'll have what the people at home are hearing, and then you play on stage a different track that no one at home can hear, and you just kind of keep up with it. And the singer sings to the at-home track. It's kind of complicated, but you can watch when the Red Hot Chili Peppers did it. Flea, the bassist, was playing bass with his shoe because he wasn't actually playing bass. All the instruments were pre-recorded. So anytime you've seen a band at the Super Bowl halftime show in like the last decade or two, I'm not really sure when it started, they weren't actually playing. Some musicians have been allowed to play lead guitar, and all of them have the option to sing. I probably shouldn't say it because I'm not certain, but I'm nearly certain that Shakira wasn't singing and J-Lo was. But again, don't get me on that for certain, but I'm pretty good at identifying it, and I'm fairly certain that Shakira wasn't singing. Maybe that's why her part sounded a lot better. I don't really know. As well, that's why Metallica turned it down, because they weren't allowed to play their instruments. And then Cardi B turned it down because apparently the pay they were offering her was significantly lower than she would charge to appear anywhere else. So she got the hell out of there. So that's not the type of thing that I want to hear. Also, come on, NFL, like, I understand that it's like a big show, but let musicians play. They're professional musicians. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like me being like a part-time podcaster getting up there and talking in front of 17 million people. Like, if Metallica wants to play drums and guitar and sing in front of 18 million people, let them fucking do it, because they know how to do it. They're not going to screw this thing up. So I think that sort of shit it's outdated. It needs to change. People like live. If something goes wrong, like if a string breaks on a guitar, right? Because that's the sort of thing that I'm sure the NFL would be like, well, what if a string breaks? So then the guitarist has to change it up. They have to, move their hand positioning and make it more difficult for them to play, but they can still hit those notes. Or maybe the song just quickly changes an octave or some shit like that. Like, bands figure it out. They're professionals. That's what they do. So that's a change that I think we will eventually see. I hope we do, but I think it's still pretty far off. And as for the pay, yeah, they're always going to be stingy because they're a corporation. On top of the halftime shenanigans, there was also, in true NFL fashion, a protest during the national anthem. However, unusually this time, it didn't come from any of the players. This time it was Jay-Z and Beyonce who opted to remain seated during Demi Lovato's rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, which was fantastic. Now, I've previously come out in support of Colin Kaepernick and his right to kneel during the anthem. And my argument is that for Colin Kaepernick, as a football player, that is the best time. That is the platform he has. So that is the best time for him to take that stand and show what he truly believes in and to protest. However, I do not buy the argument that there is no better place for Jay-Z and Beyonce to take that stand, because as a billionaire couple with massive platforms of their own, I mean, they can literally sell out the stadium that the Super Bowl was played in on a tour. They will easily perform, one of them will easily perform to more than the 100 million people or so that tuned in to the football game. Like, if they do a world tour, you're talking about 150 dates with 100,000 people in a stadium, right? Like, they're going to be viewed by millions of people every time they go on tour. I mean, clearly this was a marketing move after Jay-Z signed his new agreement with the NFL. So for a little bit of background information here, earlier in the season, it was announced that Jay-Z would be working with the NFL and trying to improve the NFL from within, is what he said, to improve the racist aspect of the sport from the inside, while collecting a big fat check, of course. So to me, this was his way of saying, and her way, like their way, I guess I should say, their way of saying, look, we support Colin Kaepernick, but, there's better ways to do it, and I did not like this. Like, it actually really bothered me, because this wasn't your platform. It just wasn't your platform. I don't think that Colin Kaepernick is disrespecting the national anthem and national pride when he takes a knee, or other players who have followed suit, because that's their platform. However, you as someone with a significantly bigger platform than Colin Kaepernick, you are disrespecting the anthem by pretending that this is a suitable platform for you. And I say that to Beyonce and Jay-Z. They have these massive crowds every night. They have the eyes and ears on them to discuss this whenever they want. Other than the 1 or 2 music videos Beyonce has done, her songs directly have never touched on this. They've never mentioned it other than in passing. But, like, why aren't they at state or federal Congress talking about it, right? Ashton Kutcher decided that he was going to start fighting for children trafficking across the world. And within 3 months, he was sitting at the Capitol building in Washington, testifying in front of the Senate, helping young girls being trafficked for sex around the world, right? In like 3 or 4 months, he was there. So you're telling me Jay-Z and Beyonce don't have the power to be in front of state or federal Congress talking about police brutality? Right? Why aren't they meeting with police chiefs around the world? Because they don't give a shit. It's just marketing, right? Colin Kaepernick is, like, even still to this day, actively meeting with police chiefs around the country. He's being flown to different conferences and stuff. Beyonce and Jay-Z don't do that. They don't do any of that shit. They're just playing a part. It was purely for marketing. So I really, really don't like that. You know, why aren't they doing what Kim Kardashian is doing with social injustice, or the prison reform, and reach out to politicians at least and get their voices heard, right? Get your picture taken with big-time politicians you like. I know they're not going to sit down with Trump, but, you know, Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or whatever politician they happen to be supporting, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, the Obamas. Sit down with them and talk about police brutality in front of a camera. Like, do something productive. But for them to just sit down, I really, really don't like it. They have their own platform. They have 2 working legs. They can use them to stand on their own damn platform. The coronavirus lives, and it is spreading like HIV at an orgy. Last week, there were a total of 4,698 confirmed cases and 106 deaths that I told you all about. As of today, exactly 7 days after I recorded that episode, there are 20,708 confirmed cases, which is an increase of 340%, and 427 confirmed deaths, which is an increase of 302%. So that is more growth than they had estimated there would be over the next 7 days. If you missed last week's episode, please go check it out, because there is lots of information on the coronavirus that everyone should have, really. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and like thank me for simplifying it and making it just easier. So if you haven't checked it out, be sure to, and share that episode with any of your friends and family, because everyone needs to be aware of what's going on, but no one, or at least no one outside of China, really should be panicking yet, so we got to find a happy medium. But what I wanted to touch on this week, to do with the coronavirus, is the reported racism targeted towards Asian people who are living abroad and ill. Apparently, there have been several what are being called racist outbursts and a few physical altercations, generally starting when an Asian person coughs or sneezes in public. And I just mean Asian in general, right? Like, the average person can't tell the difference. So if you look Asian and you've got a cold, don't go out in public right now. So first of all, I want to point out that I don't believe we can call these events racist in nature. It's a common misconception, really, but like the term racism has just been used to explain everything to do with race in general. But just because someone targets you in this way by your race doesn't make it racism, because racism is a result of systemic oppression. This right now, it's just because that it's mostly Chinese people who are sick, and some people are overreacting to that fact. This doesn't make it okay, but it also doesn't make it racist. I believe it really stems from fear, ultimately. I mean, racism in general stems from fear, but These acts stem from fear of this illness. And the problem is that everyone knows this illness is out there right now, right? Everyone, even the most uneducated people on the planet, have heard that there is like this disease outbreak, and but no one really realizes how rare it is, or not many people do. A lot of people are freaking out about it. And a lot of people also don't know how it doesn't generally kill people. It's more of a really bad cold. And this is really a problem that results from lack of education. Similar to racism in that matter, actually, where people simply aren't informed and they don't know what to expect. So right now, they're seeing news reports that this major illness is breaking out among Chinese people, and they are spreading it to the rest of the world. So when you're on a subway in New York City and some guy who to you looks Chinese, even though he's like Korean, coughs, you lash out, you freak out because what you've been told on the television. Now, it shouldn't ever become violent, but if any random person at any given time sneezes on me, I'll smack you in the head. Like, I will punch you in the face if you just sneezed all over me. That's fucking disgusting. But the things I've been reading are like a guy was coughing from across the subway car and someone started yelling out, calling him a chink and go back to your country. You're going to get everyone sick. Like just dumb shit like that. So really what I ask myself, because I truly believe it's a lack of education. So I have to ask myself, how should the truth be spread? Especially since none of these people are listening to the Laugh to Learn podcast. Because I think, number one, first and foremost, if you want to educate people, they got to listen to my podcast, right? Clearly. But you all already know that. I'm preaching to the choir. So how do you spread the correct information while also not underselling the risk? Because you don't want people to go about their daily lives thinking that the coronavirus is truly no big deal. Right? You don't want that because it is an issue, right? It has to be stopped. We don't want this to spread. I told you that if it spreads at the rate it was spreading last week, you're talking about like, I don't remember the exact number. It was like 1 or 2 million deaths in 100 days, right? We don't want to get to that point. And we should never get to that point. And we will be able to control it. But that's a potential. It's got the potential to kill 2% of the population. That's a lot of people, right? We don't want that. But how do you tell people that this is a serious problem without scaring the shit out of them? Because right now the media just scares you. They show a bunch of people in suits, big white suits, running around like the Michelin Man, if you get that reference, like looking like a big marshmallow, with masks on and scanning people, and like it's a way to show people, look, there's a big problem in a 5-minute news segment, right? Because news shows, unlike me, right, I had 25 minutes like to talk about it. I had as long as I wanted to, right? I could have done a 3-hour podcast on the coronavirus and no one would say shit. No one would listen to that podcast, I don't think, but I could do it if I wanted to, whereas regular media can't do that. So it's a serious problem in the media today because it's very difficult to share the truth with people while at the same time being sensitive to the fact that they are limited. So you need to get all the facts out in like 5 minutes. Well, since you only have a 5-minute news segment, you're going to cut all the fluff, right? Right now, I'm talking, and I'm not going to go through and cut all the fluff. Because if I did, do you know what it would sound like? It would sound like what the media is telling you about the coronavirus. Hey, there's a really bad thing. A lot of people are dying. Here's the numbers right now. Put a mask on and wash your hands to avoid getting sick. Thank you very much. Bye. I have time to tell you that's not entirely true. Only 2% of people are dying. That's really not a lot. 2 out of every 100. All of those people who have died had prior health conditions or they were over the age of 80. Most people don't need to worry about it, but we need to stop it. That's hard to say on the news. So I think, personally, the idea of podcasts providing, detailed news stories like I can right now, and YouTube being able to provide, these detailed explanations of what's happening, these things are the way of the future. And I think the old media is the past, and it's what drives like things like racism, right? Like, think about one day when like my generation is not watching the nightly news, because we're not going to. Like, no one my age watches the nightly news, right? It's going to die finally in my lifetime. So everyone's going to get their news. They're going to read about it. They're going to watch some videos on it, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, racism will die out. Do you know why? Because you're only going to be listening to podcasts and hearing voices. When you watch a YouTube video, you're going to be watching a YouTube video that's made in Dubai or made in China by someone speaking fluent English without an accent, but you're not going to see the person, like your neighborhood news channel, which is all white people or all black people. Like, that's all going away. And I know right now the news is trying to force that into it to be like, look, we've always been like this. We accept everyone. But it's like, okay, get over it. Like, we know you have the token black host and the one Asian girl, whatever the hell it is. Like, that's not the way of the future. Goodbye. But I think ultimately we just have to wait. And eventually one day, when everyone's listening to the Laugh to Learn podcast, no one's going to know what race I am. Do you know why? Because I've never bothered to say it out loud, because it's fucking stupid, right? No one looks at life, I shouldn't say no one, but most people, especially younger generations, don't look at life from a racial perspective. And if they do, it's their parents that put that into them. And that's slowly going to die out over time. But I think things like that, the misinformation that's being spread about the coronavirus and whatnot, the only way to overcome it is with time, unfortunately. It won't be fixed for the coronavirus, but hopefully by the next outbreak, people will have realized there are better sources to go to than a quick 5-minute thing on the nightly news. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with your family and your friends. Tell them all about it. Mention it at work, and make sure they know all about the incredible content available completely ad-free each and every Tuesday. As always, thank you all so much for your support, and feel free to reach out to me absolutely anytime, either on social media. You can follow my new Instagram account at Laugh to Learn, or you can use the contact page over at laughtolearnpodcast.com. All of my social media links are in the description for each and every episode. And don't forget, we got timestamps down there, so you don't have to scroll through listening to the whole damn thing no more. You can just listen to the topics you want. So I hope that helps. While I've got you, I'm also going to remind you that the Australian wildfires, they are raging, they are burning, they need help. And I'll do two announcements, well, one announcement, I guess, all at once right here, but one announcement with my Australian wildfire thing. So in 2 weeks, I'm going to be sitting down with my buddy Blaine from the band Sweet Tooth, and these guys over in Sweet Tooth, they just played a show earlier on Friday, I think it was, of this past week, raising money for the Australian wildfires. They're doing what they can. You need to do what you can. If you have anything spare, if you donate money anywhere, please send it there right now. They seriously need help. You can send it to the World Wildlife Foundation if you want to help the animals, or you can send it to the Red Cross if you want to help the people rebuilding their homes, and I mean, like, medical supplies, food. Like, people really need help. Australia is massive. It's a massive place, and there are so many people so spread out that all need your help, and they need our help. So please do whatever you can, and think about them. And really, I'm sending all the positive vibes. I know I get a few listens in Australia, so I hope all my listeners in Australia are doing okay. And yeah, I'm going to keep bringing it up every week until, I don't really know. It's a horrible situation. So until things kind of calm down a little bit. Yeah, that's really all I have to say for right now. But while I'm here, I am sitting down with my buddy Blaine from the band Sweet Tooth. We're going to be sitting down in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to be recording from dope-ass studio right downtown Toronto, which I am super hyped for. and the place is called Create Signal, and it's going to be a great time. I'm hoping it's cool that I say the name of it, but I'm assuming they want some advertising. So we're going to be in the studio there for a couple hours together. So yeah, look forward to that. Donate anything you can to the Australian wildfires. And let's get to our last topic of the day. This week, I learned all about a process which absolutely blew my mind. As of a few days ago, I thought that making it rain is what you did in a strip club when you want to watch a semi-nude girl pick up $1 from the floor, okay? I think we all do. Or it's what your loser friend in high school did that got them kicked out from the local pizza place. No, I don't want to get into that story. Officially known as cloud seeding, scientists have for decades apparently been trying to find a way to either force clouds to become rain sooner than they would naturally, or to increase the amount of rain falling depending on the scenario. Originally theorized in 1891, and it's been tested in labs since 1946, cloud seeding is the act of adding chemicals directly to a cloud in order to create a warmer freezing point for the water within the cloud. This causes ice crystals to form sooner than they would naturally and to fall to Earth, becoming either rain or snow as they fall, of course. Now, the chemicals used most often are silver iodide, potassium iodide, and dry ice. Liquid propane has also been tested in the past, and common table salt is actually becoming the most popular chemical to use as a safer and effective substitute. Yes, table salt is technically a chemical. There are many tests both from the air and ground, they are testing from the air and ground the best way to seed a cloud. It's the terminology they use. It ain't me. This includes dropping chemicals from an airplane in the typical chemtrail way and using anti-aircraft guns or rockets to fire a payload into the sky as an alternative to dropping it out of a plane. The really interesting thing about this, as if the fact that we can theoretically control the weather is not that interesting enough, the really interesting thing, though, is that it's heavily invested by nations and universities, especially nations in desert areas. But according to Andrew Mosman, this is from February of 2009 in Scientific American, he says, whether cloud seeding is effective in producing a statistically significant increase in precipitation is still a matter of academic debate, with contrasting results depending on the study in question and contrasting opinion among experts, end quote. So literally, in Scientific American, there's no evidence that this works, according to this writer in Scientific American. So in 2008, during the Summer Olympics, despite that contrasting science, the Beijing Summer Olympic Committee attempted to force rainfall from clouds before they reached Olympic City to prevent rain during the opening and closing ceremonies. Now, the real trouble with researching whether or not this works is that we don't know if the reason it didn't rain in Beijing was because of the cloud seeding or because it was never going to rain there. Literally, because of the statistics around predicting weather and how this works, there's no way to ever know if this works, at least with current technology, because we can kind of predict the weather, but it's not a sure thing. So if you spray and you're hoping it's going to make it rain more, and you predict there's 10 millimeters of rain, and then we get 14 millimeters of rain, you cannot say that it's because you sprayed that cloud with chemicals, because we all know that sometimes they say, oh, you're going to get an inch of rain, and then you get 10. And it's not because someone poured chemicals in the sky. It's just because, it's a hit and miss thing. We're generally right, but we're never certain. So you can't actually study if this works. So far, there is absolutely no evidence, however, of negative impact to either the environment or to humans from cloud seeding. And this comes from several different research centers. As silver iodide is natural in the environment and it's only hazardous in large quantities over an extended period of time. And as well, there's been no environmental impact or increased atmospheric levels of silver iodide where cloud seeding is actively practiced or actively studied. So they've never found an issue affecting any sorts of environment or anything. However, Australia has actually banned it because there's an endangered animal, a pygmy... I don't remember what it was, like a hedgehog or something strange like that. And it is apparently affected by silver iodide for whatever reason. So they've banned it just in case, but the science shows that actually it shouldn't have an impact on this or any other creature, but yet it's still banned in many areas. Ultimately, I wanted to just quickly talk about this today because it was a crazy cool thing that I didn't know that the human species was working on. And it's just an awesome thing that we're trying to do that I think is a good conversation starter for you this week. Ask your friends if they knew that we're actually trying to control the rain. Who knows? Maybe this could be a way to help fight wildfires one day, or to bring natural vegetation to a place like Dubai, who is, of course, investing in this very heavily right now. So over the next few decades, let's all watch how this goes. And who knows? Because maybe one day it'll turn out that those chemtrail dudes on Reddit were right the whole time. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope the audio quality turns out all right. I managed to get through the whole recording without losing anything, so I hope it turns out well for you guys. Please let me know if there's any major issues. I mean, if you've made it this far, probably not. I should have put this message at the beginning, but I'm not going to figure out how to do that now. I really encourage you to take these discussions outside to the real world with your friends or with your family. It's really interesting, that whole cloud seeding thing. Like, we're actually making weather, so that's kind of cool. It's a cool thing to talk to people about, and I bet you could surprise someone because someone else will find that really cool. As always, this podcast is completely ad-free, and I just ask that you share it with your friends and family. Subscribe on any podcasting app that you happen to be using. Also, look out for me on YouTube, because I'm getting back in the YouTube game. I'm working on it. I don't know when I'm going to fully launch it, but I'm working on doing some YouTube clips. So there's shorter things that you can share with your friends and family, or you can rewatch yourself. So you don't have to jump into a whole episode, but you can catch like a 5 or 10 minute clip of a topic. So yeah, watch out for that. And don't forget to come back each and every week right here, because, you know, as always, I just implore you all for the entire next week, the entire week, please, 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 keep on laughing and keep on learning.